She wanted me to hand over the keys because the children in the community needed free access to nature. Her idea? To turn my yard into a public walkway. She called a meeting, signed a petition, and handed me a note threatening me with a fine. If there's one thing you learn after living in an HOA, it's that the problem is never the structure, it's the ego. There's always someone who thinks they're the architect of behavior, the urban planner of morals, and the sheriff of visual peace. And on this street, the undefeated champion in this role was her, the woman who called herself janitor of the community's balance. But what she really wanted was to control everything that breathed within that perimeter. My house was next to a path that led down to the lake, a beautiful, quiet path that cut through the conservation area. Officially, access to the lake was via a side entrance, 300 meters to the right. But this path behind my house was a tempting route for the lazy and clever in the neighborhood. And she, of course, thought she could turn it into an authorized shortcut. She showed up one Saturday morning as if to deliver flowers. She clapped twice, holding an envelope with the HOA logo printed on it crookedly. I was still in my pajamas and coffee in hand when I heard the sentence that already hinted at the chaos to come. We're reorganizing access to the lake, and the board has decided that your property can serve as a strategic entry point. That's why I need a copy of the key to your back gate. At first, I laughed. I thought it was a joke. Those crazy condo meeting conversations that die at the coffee table. But the woman looked at me with the conviction of someone asking to borrow sugar. She repeated that it was a simple request for community cooperation and that I should understand the importance of visual integration between the houses and the lake. I breathed. I said it didn't make any sense, that the gate belonged to my house, that there was no clause in the regulations authorizing territorial invasion, and that she had no autonomy to decide over my right to private property. But she insisted, like someone who had already rehearsed the conversation. She said it wasn't invasion, it was shared flow for collective leisure purposes. I said it wouldn't work, and that was that. I thought the subject had died there, not least because she left with that half-smile of someone who's going to try something else. But the woman was persistent, or crazy, or both combined. The following week, I received a notice from the HOA, again crudely printed, informing me that my gate would be provisionally integrated into the network of community accesses to the lake by an unregistered plenary decision, a piece of paper worthy of a fiction award. She signed it as Coordinator of Residential and Environmental Links, a position that obviously only existed in her head. I ignored it. Of course, how do you reply to a letter written in the parallel universe? But she didn't stop there. She showed up again, this time with two residents, an elderly couple who had probably been dragged along to give the appearance of collective support. She tried to talk to my wife, who is a delegate. She tried that build bridges, not walls thing. But my wife has no patience for delirium with a good neighbor frame. She said it straight. Any attempt to invade someone else's property on the basis of a false document will be considered housebreaking, and you'll be dealing with the real police. The woman turned around, but it was obvious that she wasn't finished. A campaign began. Posters were pasted on the walls of the condominium with the title, Free Access to the Lake, a Natural Right for All. She sent messages in the groups, calling the gate a barrier of selfishness. She said that some residents were preventing us from living with nature out of pure territorial whim. Things escalated quickly. Some neighbors started asking why I was against collective use of the trail. Others said I should reconsider to avoid fights. People who had never set foot on the lake began to care about the path. It was the effect of manipulation, turning the invader into a victim and the owner of the house into a villain. In the third week, I noticed that the padlock on the gate had been forced. Someone had tried to open it. The chain was marked. The paintwork was scratched. It wasn't an attempt at conversation. It was invasion, disguised as a collective. And that's when we hatched the plan. My wife warned her colleagues at the police station. As the land bordered a conservation area, we got support from the environmental police. They set up an operation quietly, with no fanfare, but with everything ready. Cameras installed, motion sensors, alerts connected directly to the central office. All we had to do was wait for the next attempt. And, of course, it came. Because these types of people never back down when they believe they are above the rule. The day of the attempted invasion was a mixture of comedy and despair. It began with silence. Silence typical of when something wrong is about to happen. The woman didn't show up in the morning, nor did she send any messages in the condominium group. No flyers, no staging of collective harmony. When these kinds of people are silent, it's a sign that a bomb is coming. In the afternoon, while my son was watching a cartoon and my wife was off duty, the sensor on the back gate beeped. It was discreet, but it sent a direct signal to the tablet in the living room. The alert appeared in red. Forced access. Perimeter 3. I went to the back window. I looked through the gap in the curtain and saw a scene that could only have come out of a crude neighborhood cult movie. She was there, wearing a cap, sportswear, and a crossbody bag. Behind her were two locals I've never seen talking to anyone. They looked like supporting actors summoned by last-minute SMS, and in her hand, a bunch of keys. Yes, she tried to open the gate with a custom-made key, except that the gate had a double security lock and an internal alarm sensor. The silent alarm that, at the exact moment the key turned the wrong way, directly alerted the police car positioned on the street corner. She looked around, gestured with her arm as if to say, "Cover me," and tried the key again. One of the men seemed impatient. The woman whispered something we couldn't hear, but the gesture was clear. She was determined to get in. For her, this was no trespass. It was a sacred mission, in the name of other people's leisure. When the third attempt at the key failed, she took a piece of wire out of her bag. A piece of wire. She was going to force the gate. There she was, on her knees, manipulating the latch, as if it were an episode of a reality TV show about amateur criminals. Only she forgot one small detail. The yard was being monitored by 2 cameras and a long-range lens connected to the police station. The police arrived in less than 4 minutes, but it came in silence. No siren. They wanted to catch her in the act, and they did. The policeman got out of the car slowly and walked around the side of the plot, police report in hand. One of the officers filmed the entire approach. She was still crouching when she heard the voice behind her. "Stop. Put your hands up. Move away from the gate. Document. Now." The woman froze. The 2 neighbors took a step back, like someone who realizes they've stepped into a fire without knowing how big it is. She tried to stand up calmly, compose her face, adjust her posture, but she couldn't hide the trembling in her fingers. "This is a misunderstanding. I'm from the HOA. We were just trying to access the lake." The policeman was direct. "You're on private property, trying to force entry with an unauthorized key, and there's already a police report in your name. You are being taken to the police station to explain yourself." Her face, which always had that arrogant glow, turned into a mixture of dread and disbelief. It wasn't possible that this was happening. Not to her, the woman who regulated the type of flower allowed in the balcony vases, the one who suggested pastel tones in the name of coexistence, the one who thought she was the curator of the block's visual sense. And there she was, being led away by the police for attempted trespass, in front of the cameras. At the gate, she tried to turn into a community tourist attraction. My son didn't understand what was going on, but he laughed when he saw the police passing by with the woman between them. The dog barked once, like someone celebrating the fall of an invisible empire. And my wife? She just crossed her arms, watching everything from the balcony, with the look of someone who has seen much more dangerous people fall in the same way, through their own arrogance. At the police station, she tried to justify herself. She said that she acted on the wishes of the residents, that she had the best of intentions, that she just wanted to promote access to the lake in a practical way, all wrapped up in that colorful paper of forced altruism that no longer sticks, but it was no use. She was charged with attempted housebreaking, using a false document and institutional harassment, and she had to sign a restriction of contact form with my family. The most ironic thing? The HOA itself issued a statement distancing itself from her. They said that they had never authorized access through that route, that the woman was acting on her own, and that the administration values respect for privacy and the law. The following week, the back gate became an attraction. Everyone wanted to go through it, to see where the woman from the lake trail had fallen. There were neighbors taking selfies, children pointing, elderly people commenting on the sidewalk as if it were a soap opera. The gate became a monument, the woman a joke. But there was more, because her criminal trial would only be the beginning. Her fall didn't happen with a bang. It was more like an old building that begins to crack roof by roof until there is no structure left to disguise the collapse. In the days following the failed raid, the woman disappeared. Literally. Nobody saw her on the sidewalk, in the morning walking group, or in the bakery where she used to complain about the wholemeal bread being not very symmetrical. She disappeared. The HOA, of course, was quick to jump ship. They sent out a dry statement, with the empathy of a badly programmed robot, saying that the volunteer employee does not represent, nor has she represented, the official administrative decisions of the association. Translation? They abandoned her like someone who throws away a wilted flower after a party. No surprise there. She was only useful as long as she caused obedient silence. When she made headlines, she became a nuisance. And yes, it was a headline. The story hit social media hard. A short video of the police approach circulated in local groups. The scene of the exact moment when she is caught forcing the gate became a meme. They put on an epic soundtrack, made a montage with that screen filter breaking, and of course, she became a WhatsApp sticker with the phrase, "The lake trail will pass over you." A combination of debauchery and justice that the internet knows how to apply like no other. But it wasn't just the internet. The case reached the prosecutor's office. The complaint had already been filed for attempted violation of private property, use of a fraudulent document, and coercion of residents. Her lawyer, a guy who looked like he'd stepped out of a 90s cable TV commercial, tried to argue that it was all just excessive community zeal, that she only wanted the collective good. But the collective good doesn't include false keys, wires, and repeated attempts to enter land that doesn't belong to you. The process continued. A hearing was scheduled, and in the midst of this, she tried to recover. She started circulating emails with veiled apologies. "I deeply regret any inconvenience caused." It wasn't remorse. It was calculation. She knew she needed to clean up her image before sitting in the dock. But the damage had already been done. The gate was now a symbol of resistance. They even had a decorative sign made and hung on the side. Free access area only for those with common sense and permission. The neighborhood became more respectful. Not out of fear, but out of shame. That woman showed the limit of what an obsession with control can cause. Some people apologized for having supported her. People who used to sign her papers without reading them. People who let themselves be carried away by the discourse of order. A neighbor confessed that she signed the petition for access to the lake, thinking it was just to install a new fence. She said that the woman had a leadership style and spoke beautifully. And look, that's always how neighborhood tyrants conquer territory. While she tried to defend herself, the police continued to gather evidence. The security camera in my backyard had recorded everything, including the moment when she whispers something like, "Relax, if he doesn't give it up, we'll force him." The audio wasn't crystal clear, but it was enough to reinforce the context. It was attached to the case file. The prosecutor thanked her personally. And my wife? She watched everything with a discreet smile, not one of revenge, but of someone who knows that justice, when done well, is a pleasure to watch. She knew the game. She had seen dozens like that woman, people who believe that the world is an extension of their own backyard. who think that rules can be molded when the aim is to maintain order. The first hearing was scheduled for a Friday. The woman showed up in dress clothes, discreet makeup, a navy blue scarf around her neck. She tried to appear restrained. She just couldn't contain her look of despair when she saw my wife on the other side of the room, sitting as a witness, the same delegate she had tried to challenge with a forged key and a speech of visual peace. During her testimony, she insisted that everything had been misinterpreted, that she never wanted to trespass, that she had verbal permission from neighbors to use the access. She thought that, as it was a natural path, it could be used by the community. The judge listened quietly, unhurriedly, as if he already knew that the whole thing was a rehearsal for emotional defense. At the end, the prosecutor asked for the floor and was direct. "Your Honor, this is an emblematic case of disrespect for private property, disguised as good intentions. We're not talking about a distracted lady. We're talking about someone who printed a false document, used cloned keys, forced a gate, coerced residents, and even tried to justify it all on the basis of a supposed community mission. That's not zeal, it's arrogance, and it should be treated as such." The judge thanked him. He said he would look into the case, but that, regardless of the final decision, he was already ordering, "You are forbidden to go near the complainant's home under penalty of arrest in flagrante," and that, on the recommendation of the prosecutor's office, she will be added to the local police station's anti-social behavior watch list. She left the room smaller than she entered. The navy blue scarf now looked like a tight noose around her neck. Gradually, her name disappeared from the conversations. Not out of forgiveness, but out of exhaustion. People got tired of mentioning it, remembering it, repeating it. What remained were the traces of something that seemed more like a suburban fable than a real episode. The woman who tried to turn a private gate into a public walkway, out of ego and the guise of collectivity, became just another former resident with a dirty record and a burnt reputation. The trial was quick. It didn't even have to drag on for months as it usually does. The body of evidence was so vast that any attempt at a defense sounded like debauchery. The judge was straightforward. She received an alternative sentence, community service, and a fine for trespassing and falsifying a document. She was also banned from participating in any board or volunteer position in residential associations for at least 2 years. It was the social equivalent of being banished from the kingdom she had built up in her head. Of course, she tried to get out of it. She started spreading the word in the condo group that she was moving out for personal reasons. She made a sweet farewell post saying that she would miss the neighborhood, that mistakes happen, but that she always acted from the heart. The problem is that her heart was a control freak with authoritarian desires, and that no longer sticks even in a good morning message with a flower. The sale of the house was quick, even too quick. The new buyer knew about the history but didn't care. He said that every neighborhood has a crazy legend, and that, after seeing the gate, he understood the size of the theater. He renovated everything. He tore down the fence, put up a new automated gate, and installed a 360-degree camera. His dog is a caramel mongrel who barks at any leaf. The lake goes on behind, calm, blue, ignoring the human drama that tried to kidnap it. The woman, on the other hand, is gone for good. Some say she went to live with a sister in another city. Others swear they saw her trying to repeat the same role of defender of the community landscape in a new neighborhood. Only there, it seems, no one bought the idea of forced good neighborliness. Her fame moved faster than the change. They even created a WhatsApp group called Alert. HOA is not a dictatorship, with reports from people who had crossed paths with similar people. It seems that the coordinator of everything syndrome is more common than you might think. In the neighborhood she left behind, the lessons were learned. The HOA has started to act more transparently. The new board abolished symbolic positions, did away with committees with no function, and set clear rules on access, space, and, above all, limits. The word privacy has regained its weight, and the concept of community was rebuilt in a more mature way, without the need for gaudy flyers or summonses on word letterhead. My wife has returned to her quiet routine. She still gets calls from some neighbors who ask if she could take a look at certain internal conflicts, but she always replies with a smile. If it's a crime, I'll look into it. If it's drama, send her to a therapist. Our gate is still there, refurbished, prettier, with a smart lock, but no one tries to force their way through anymore, not out of fear, but out of conscience. The path to the lake is back to being the official path, the one from the side entrance, with the tall bushes and slippery stones. The path that requires effort, but which belongs to everyone, not out of imposition, but out of respect. The lake is finally just a lake again. No symbol, no stage, no battle flag, just a mirror of water at the end of the street, reflecting trees, sky, and children playing on the shore. As for the woman, today she is just a story that we tell as a warning. Beware of those who want to control everything in the name of collective well-being. Sometimes this well-being is just the perfect excuse to feed their own delirium of power. And when that happens, the gate she tried to break down isn't just made of iron. It's the limit of decency. Don't forget to leave your likes and opinions in the comments.